When you love someone, you naturally assume the best in them. Even when things become difficult, you hold on to hope, convincing yourself that this is just a rough patch, something temporary. You tell yourself, we'll figure it out. We always do. That's exactly what I did. My name is Duke, and I won't sit here and pretend my marriage was perfect. It wasn't. I had my own struggles. My business was barely hanging on, money was tight, and every day felt like an uphill battle just to keep things together. The stress weighed on me constantly, but I believed that if I just kept pushing forward, things would eventually get better. Cassandra and I weren't as close as we used to be. I noticed the distance, the quiet moments filled with something unspoken, but I never once considered that she was pulling away because there was someone else. In my mind, we were just going through a phase, something every couple experiences. And like any problem, I was determined to fix it. With our anniversary coming up, I thought maybe all we needed was a reminder of why we fell in love in the first place. A night just for us. Something special. So, I planned a romantic evening, an intimate dinner at a place I knew she loved, something to make her feel cherished again. I wanted to show her that despite everything life had thrown at us, I was still here, still choosing us. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Cassandra had already found her happiness elsewhere. The night before our anniversary, everything changed. We were at home, winding down from the day, following the same routine we always did. I was on the couch, flipping through channels absent-mindedly, while Cassandra lay back, only half watching whatever was playing. At some point, she got up, grabbing a towel and heading toward the bathroom. "What are we eating tonight?" I called after her. She paused in the doorway, glancing over her shoulder. "Just use my phone and order the usual," she said casually before disappearing into the bathroom, the sound of running water following seconds later. It was such a simple moment, something so mundane and familiar. I had unlocked her phone countless times before, never giving it a second thought. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. As soon as I unlocked the screen, a message notification appeared at the top. Just a small, unobtrusive banner. A few words. "Damn, babe. I'll miss you this weekend, but I get it, anniversary and all. Can't wait to see you next week." For a moment, I couldn't process what I had just read. My mind went completely blank. The words stared back at me, taunting me, daring me to make sense of them. I read them again. Then again. My heart pounded in my chest, a dull roar filling my ears. My hands moved on their own, tapping the message, opening the full conversation. And that's when my entire world shattered. The messages stretched back for months. Each one was worse than the last, filled with laughter, excitement, longing, and intimacy. Real intimacy, the kind I hadn't felt with Cassandra in a long time. She had told this man, this stranger, that she wouldn't be available over the weekend because of our anniversary. And him? He wasn't upset. He understood. He was patient. He was already making plans for their next time together. I kept scrolling, my fingers trembling. I knew I should stop, but I couldn't. Each message I read chipped away at the life I thought I had, crushing the illusions I had clung to for so long. And then I saw them, the messages filled with details. Things she had done with him. Things she had never even hinted at wanting to do with me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a drunken one-night lapse in judgment. She had built an entire secret life with this man. And yet, every night, she still came home to me. The anger came slowly at first, a quiet ember flickering to life inside me. But I forced myself to stay calm. I needed proof. Evidence. Something undeniable. Moving quickly, I began taking screenshots, every message, every picture, every sickening detail. When I was done, I transferred everything to my own phone, securing it before placing hers back exactly how I had found it. By the time I put her phone down, my hands were still shaking. My heart was pounding against my ribs, but I made no move to react. Not yet. Cassandra emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming softly as she went through her nightly routine. She moisturized her skin, tied up her hair, completely at ease. Completely oblivious to the storm waiting for her just a few feet away. That night, everything changed. I could have confronted her right then and there. I could have. But I didn't. I needed to think. I needed to breathe. So instead, I walked back to the couch, picked up the remote, and turned on the TV. I tried to focus on anything that wasn't the reality I had just uncovered. But no matter what played on the screen, my mind refused to let go of what I had seen. When it was finally time for bed, I hesitated. The thought of lying next to her, feeling her warmth, knowing what she had been doing behind my back, it made my stomach turn. I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. But as the night dragged on and I assumed she had fallen asleep, I finally stood. Slowly, I walked to the bedroom, dreading every step. As I slid under the covers, she stirred. Rolling over, she rested a hand on my chest, then leaned in to kiss me good night. I pulled away. I didn't even realize the words had left my mouth until I heard them. "I'd kiss you," I murmured, my voice eerily calm, "but I don't want to taste your boyfriend." Cassandra froze, her lips hovering inches from mine. Her eyes, still heavy with sleep, widened instantly. She pulled back slowly, her breath hitching. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice unsteady. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how predictable she was. The immediate denial. The feigned confusion. As if she truly believed she could gaslight her way out of this. I didn't play along. Without a word, I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and opened the folder containing everything. Then, in the same quiet voice, I began reading. Line by line. Word for word. Her words. I barely got through the first few messages before she broke. Her face crumpled. She lunged for my phone, her hands shaking as she tried to grab it from me. "Wait, just let me explain," she cried. She tried to snatch it from me, but I was faster. I pulled back, stepping off the bed, keeping it just out of reach. She collapsed onto the mattress, her body racked with sobs, hands covering her tear-streaked face. "I'm sorry," she choked out between ragged breaths. "It was a mistake, Duke. It was a moment of weakness." I stood there, silent, watching her unravel. "I was just tempted, that's all it was," she continued. Desperation lacing her voice. "I wanted to explore my own desires, but you were always busy, and I didn't mean for it to happen like this." I tilted my head, studying her with an eerie calm. Then, in a voice that barely wavered, I asked, "How do you feel, knowing what you did with your mouth but still coming to kiss me with it?" She didn't answer, because what could she possibly say? She sat there, frozen, trembling, her tears rolling down her face. And I didn't care anymore. The last ember of love, the last sliver of trust one had for her, had burned away. Without another word, I turned around, walked out of the room, and left her alone in the mess she had created. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't sleeping next to her that night. The days that followed were a blur. I wish I could tell you I had some grand revelation, that I woke up the next morning with a clear mind and a solid plan, but I didn't. Instead, I just existed. I went to work, came home, went to work again, came home again. I barely spoke. I barely ate. I barely even thought. I just kept moving, one day at a time, like a man trapped in the routine of a life that no longer felt like his own. And Cassandra? She acted like nothing had happened. She attempted to force normalcy back into our marriage, pretending as though everything was fine. She would ask about my day like she always used to, throwing in a soft smile here and there, hoping I'd return it. She lingered near me, standing just a little too close, touching my arm when she spoke, as if reminding me that she was still there. At night, she would slide into bed beside me, but I never turned to face her. The space between us felt like an ocean. I was there, but I was gone. When her casual attempts didn't work, she tried harder. One evening, I came home late. The scent of my favorite meal filled the house. I walked into the kitchen to find the table neatly set, the plates waiting, the wine poured. She stood there, hands clasped in front of her, eyes hopeful, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I looked at the plate, then walked past it and went straight to the bedroom. I didn't touch the food. For the next week, she kept trying. But I could feel the desperation creeping in. She wanted me to talk, to react, to get angry. Anything would have been better than the silence I gave her. But I had nothing left to say. I didn't see her the same way anymore. And that's when I knew. Our marriage was already over. One evening, after work, I called her into the living room. When she finally sat down, I wasted no time. I reached into my bag, pulled out a set of divorce papers, and placed them on the table in front of her. She stared at them for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she looked up at me, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What is this?" she asked, even though she already knew. My voice was calm when I spoke. "Sign these, or I share your secret affair with everyone you know." For a split second, I saw something in her expression. Shock, maybe even a little fear. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She knew that if I wanted to, I could destroy whatever respectable image she had left. Then, like clockwork, the tears came. Fresh sobs racked her body, her hands trembling as she reached for the papers. I didn't say anything. I just watched as she broke down in front of me. In her mind, this wasn't supposed to happen. Maybe she thought I'd eventually forgive her, that things would go back to the way they were. Maybe she thought time would make me forget. But this wasn't something I could forget. I waited as she picked up the pen, her fingers shaking. She wiped her face, then signed her name. With each stroke of the pen, our marriage died. And that was it. No big fight. No dramatic, last-minute pleas. Just a quiet ending to something that should have lasted a lifetime. On paper, she still had her job, her money. But what she lost was so much greater. She lost a stable home. She lost a husband who would have done anything for her. And worst of all, she lost the respect of everyone who would one day ask, "Why did your marriage end?" And when that question came, I wondered, would she tell the truth? You'd think that once the divorce was finalized, that would be the end of it. That she'd sign the papers, accept the consequences, and move on. But that's not what happened. Cassandra didn't want to let go. At first, the messages were subtle. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" A random meme she thought I'd find funny. A nostalgic text about, "Remember when we used to?" Moments. I ignored them all. Then the messages got longer. She told me she missed us. She missed what we had. She missed the way I used to look at her, the way I held her, the way we could talk about anything. She said she was lonely now, that no one else understood her the way I did. It was almost funny. Almost. Because the way she spoke, you'd think she was a widow mourning the death of a husband she had loved with all her heart. As if she hadn't been the one to destroy our marriage with her own hands. She wanted to pretend she was the victim. I wasn't interested. Then, one day, she sent a message that actually made me pause. "We don't have to remarry. We can just live together again." I stared at my phone for a long time, rereading those words. I imagined her sitting wherever she was, actually believing that I'd be desperate enough to take her back under any circumstances. That maybe I'd be weak enough to let her crawl back into my life. So I sent her one final message. One that made it clear I was never going to be a part of her life again. Go cohabit with your young lover. That was it. The final nail in the coffin. She didn't reply after that. Maybe because she finally got the message. Maybe because she knew there was nothing left to say. Some people throw away love for temporary pleasure. They risk everything. Their home, their marriage, the person who would have stood by them no matter what, for a moment of excitement. And when they finally realize their mistake, it's already too late. I moved past her. I built something new for myself. And if you ever find yourself in my shoes, I hope you do the same.